how maybe society
so these
deems it.
like the alpha hierarchy, I just think it's nonsense. But like if you're talking about like a sissified man or something like this, sure, right? I can see that, or a simp or this type of thing. But I'd still like to know this phenomenon of where you're finding all of these really submissive, career-driven women. Like, where do you think all of these women are?
I don't think
There
any
is a lot
women,
of
unless you're like
Are
a
there?
straight up liberal and just delusional, I don't think there's any women who want to be career driven. I think it's the choice that you have because you haven't found any kind of a situation where you're going to be provided for. You're not just going to sit in your dad's garage at 18 and just wait for some knight to come save you. That's just not the reality of the world. And based on the destruction of the nuclear family, that's where we're at.
That's career driven. Then it seems like if
I
you're
think
getting
you
a
have a choice.
career because that's the alternative you have to being taken care of, then that's not you being driven towards career. That's you getting a career because it's the only way that you can make ends meet. Seems like that's something you would give up very quickly if you didn't have to make ends meet. So I don't really understand where that drive is exactly.
I don't understand it either, but I can tell you that my ex, the girl he was with in the years that we were apart, like he offered for her to live with him and him pay all the bills and stuff. And she's like, no, I want to get my PhD. You can kind of like fuck off. And I don't want to have kids either, at least not for many years. I'm just focused on this. And I'm like, hi, I'll live with you. I think it's crazy to not accept that. But, and some of it's just like, you can't, like the reliability of men too. Like you have to just, a guy, I can tell you firsthand, I was married to someone who wanted to be a provider and all the things, and then ended up, well, I can't get into that, but it ended up going left. So that's where the fear comes from for a lot of women. But some women just genuinely don't have that drive in there. And also, ironically, she was submissive to him, and like we're kind of even keel with one another. And I'm more like trad wifey, I guess. And it's also a thing where people assume trad wives are going to always be submissive and just like let their partner steamroll over them all the time, and that's also not the case. Like there's so many variables in all the relationship
this all depends
dynamics.
on how you want to define things, right? But tradition, like how would you even define tradition? It's actually a hard word to define.
What a nuclear family looks like. The man works,
Well, I
pays
mean,
the
you
bills.
wouldn't define tradition as just being nuclear family. Tradition has a specific meaning.
In
right?
regards to dating, though,
Well, I mean, just in general, what would you say tradition is?
following what generations before you did.
Yeah, I think there's some truth. I don't think that captures it, but it kind of has the right idea to be charitable, right? Best way I heard this described was tradition would be experiments that cultures have done that work, right? That's kind of a thing that we would point to as being tradition, like Christmas, for instance. It seems to be kind of this experiment that the culture did, and it seems to work fine, right? It's a stressful time of the year, and we just can't seem to wait for it or wait for it to be over, but it's something that seems to work. Halloween, these different holidays, all sorts of different traditional kind of aspects of American culture, right? Culture, biblical, etc. These are all experiments which work. So what happens when experiments start breaking down, like the liberal experiment, the progressive experiment? People start to look at the experiments that worked, right? And they go, okay, we got to move back to those experiments because they worked. So that's what I think traditionalism is, right? So I think that the modern woman wants to have her cake and eat it too. Because at the time that marriages were working, women didn't have a fucking say, okay? That's the truth. You want to see the time where there was almost no divorce, right? We can show you a time when the happiness index was likely
They
happier.
couldn't file for divorce, so
They
does
could.
it count?
No, they could.
Like, so you're accounting for like past the 80s?
They could.
Okay.
They could show cause for divorce. Even the church granted divorces for infidelity, things like this. But even in the early 1920s, 1930s, right, 1940s, people were much happier, and everybody you ask in modernity.
Well, they could get a divorce, but they couldn't have
I've asked this question a million times. You think people were happier in the 1950s as they are right now? Almost every time the answer is yes. I think they were. Interestingly enough, women couldn't have the credit cards, though, right? Women couldn't have. They didn't have all this suffering. They didn't have all this shit. Very strange to me, right? Why it is they didn't have any of these kind of feminist ideals, and yet seem to be far happier when they didn't have all this say. So I think when people say tradition, they don't really mean tradition. They mean, I want modernity with this kind of LARPing aspect. The LARPing aspect being, yay, I get to stay at home and not fucking do shit, right? Yay, this is great. But I don't think that's traditional. What's traditional about that? And tradition is supposed to be that you obey. That's supposed to be the tradition. The tradition's not supposed to be egalitarianism in the household. That's modernity. It's the opposite of tradition.
But
yeah, right. But why not? Because just the word makes you sick because you've been completely brainwashed, just been worked on your entire life, that obedience to a man, you're every bit as good as him, even though it has nothing to do with good.
there was one of those Burr moments.
Has nothing to do with
I
good,
think,
right?
Well, maybe it's my social programming, but just my personality type in general. The like, obey, not a fan. But I am a fan of doing the cooking and the cleaning and all of the things
that you like to do. Right, but that's not obedience.
I like to cook.
Yeah, but it's not obedience for you to do things you like to do. It's obedience for you to do things that you don't like to do when you're told to do them. That's obedience.
But we could also just say that the nuclear family dynamic works better, and you don't also have to be like totally subservient to your partner.
It doesn't work. What breaks it down is the lack of subservience from the woman. The lack of obedience from the woman is what breaks it almost every single time. This is why, you tell me, why are they filing for divorce at such high rates? Why are they pushing back against men at such high rates? They're completely disobedient in their relationships.
Looks like you have something on this. Go ahead.
No. I mean...
You agree? Do you agree or disagree with Andrew?
I don't agree.
Why?
For a few reasons. I don't know.
You want to articulate those?
On what specific points? Like...
Obeying.
Okay. So, I mean...
Submission.
I don't know. If somebody wants to obey, I just...
It's not obedience.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll do what you want if I want to. It's like, well, where does the obey part come in?
Right.
Well, I'll follow you as soon as I think that I need to follow you. When I decide that it's okay to follow you, then I'll
Ryan
follow
from
you.
The Office. But no, but like maybe obedience doesn't need to factor in though. Maybe we could just get back to men being providers and leaders and women being mothers and caretakers
great.
and
You
taking stress off of the men by handling the things that they don't have the time to do if they're
That's great. You get all the perks and the benefits.
I mean, not all, like I don't think most women also want to cook, clean, and bear babies.
Oh, that's so hard to cook and clean. Look at this.
I don't think it's hard if someone else.
So you get to stay home all day. You get the luxury of being at home with your own children. You don't have to outsource that if you're not lazy and you actually homeschool. And if you're not, your kid's going somewhere else for 8 hours a day. Literally 8 hours a day while you're at home. Oh my God!
No, I literally agree with you on this.
This is terrible. This is horrible.
It is hard.
It's horrible what's happening to women. It's like, no, it's not hard. And
it is hard.
On top of that, you say, okay, I get all the perks, all the benefits, but I don't want to do that obedience.
I have a question.
Fuck that obedience thing, and it's like,
and
that's a pretty raw deal for men.
But like, also like, I can't even imagine a situation where one would need to be obedient because I'm like looking at my boyfriends and like ex-husband and like, well, maybe
when it matters, that's when.
But like, so give me an example of like what?
That's what I was gonna say. Like, what extent
what way
is
we need to?
Multiple examples.
Like, we
like
could
do you
talk
think you
about
can beat your
intercourse,
wife?
for example?
Like, do you think that that's acceptable?
No.
What?
Okay, but like, to what extent do you think she should obey though? Like, what if she disobeys you? Then
Within
what do
the
you do?
confines of reason.
Like, so just give me an
She
example.
has to be obedient within the confines of reason. Beating your wife would be sinful.
Okay, well, if she doesn't obey you, what do you do? What would you do?
What, for disobedience?
Yeah.
Well, the same things that you would do right now. You would try reason, right? You would explain what their duties are, and you would go to your community, in this case the church, to see if you could get this reconciled, right? Because it's a problem.
And what if she continues to disobey?
Well, then there's going to be extreme problems inside of the marriage, and it's going to be a lot of fucking misery. That's what.
But marriage takes work between both people.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that.
If, like, somebody doesn't want to do something.
I still want an example of obeying.
There's no disputing. Well, okay. I'm fine giving those examples, right? But when the person asks me a question, I have to give that answer, then I have to give that answer. Now we've circled back to this one. Okay, so
Exactly. circle back.
discipline.
That's right.
Discipline is a great one, right? What if your husband wants to discipline, he wants to use a belt? Can he? Yeah, see?
I mean, I don't
it's
really.
so easy.
Honestly, I'm not. I'm gonna get so much shit for this. I'm not totally against spanking. Like, I think it's got to be age appropriate and it's got to be not.
Yeah, but why do you get to decide that, not him?
Because they're half mine, and it is also my job to protect
Yeah, but
them.
I mean, okay, again.
But I guess that's one example.
This would be
Sure.
disobedience immediately. It's like, okay, no, I think that it is the right age. No, I don't. What if he wants to take him?
I'll disobey.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll move into the kind of like disobedient road. And so this is an easy example. Schooling. Extensions of what types of things you'd want them to do for, let's say you want them to play music or you want them to have these curriculums. Maybe you're disagreeing on those things. Ultimately, somebody's going to have to ultimately be the decider, I think, again. But when I'm talking about disobedience specifically, it's like, no, you don't get to beat your wife. That's insane. Doesn't comport with reason, right? But you can use shaming tactics and utilize the church to assist you in kind of moving and counseling the relationship the right direction.
This is actually, it's below the threshold, but Alvin Sam, this is a great super chat. You have a problem being submissive, but demand chivalry and breadwinners.
Well, that's what I was pointing out already, right? Is that like you get to stay at home. You get all the perks of this, but no, as long as I keep getting what I want, you do what I say.
Well, I just think for me personally, it's circumstantial, and I'm willing to budge on a lot of things. Like, I'm not probably as combative as maybe I'm making myself seem, but you're not just gonna, especially because I have kids and they're my kids. So maybe my perspective on it's a little bit different than if we had a shared child. But I'm willing to budge on a lot of things.
Yeah, maybe, right? But that's not really the point. So the point really isn't reduced to, if I think that I should submit because it sounds reasonable, I will. That's beside the point. The point is supposed to be when it doesn't seem reasonable to you to submit that you will. That's the point.
You said something about the woman benefits, I guess, most if the man's the breadwinner providing and
Yep.
One thing I want to comment on is if the woman is providing homeschooling to the child, let's just say it's that sort of scenario, because right now a lot of people have issues with the school system.
Yep.
Well, then the man also is benefiting because that wife is capable of providing schooling for the child so that they don't get indoctrinated in the school systems. That
Consider
could
this
be
to be the bare minimum. The
could
bare
be
minimum of duty and responsibility of a good mother is that if she's enabled by her husband to stay at home and homeschool her kids, then she should. That should be a duty. This is not. When I see this idea, it's like a top. It's like somebody spinning a top. It makes no sense to me. It's like, look at this great thing I'm doing. No, this is a baseline duty. It's a baseline duty. You know the public school's fucked. You know they're indoctrinating your kids. You know they're doing horrible things to them, right? You know this. It's like, so you have a duty, if you can, to stay home and, homeschool your kids. You have this duty. I consider that to be a baseline. I would not consider that to be something in addition that you're doing in the benefit of your own offspring.
Agreed,
But
but most
if-
women aren't doing it, though.
let's just say he marries someone who isn't capable of doing that. I would love to be able to homeschool my kids. I think it's something that's necessary right now, considering everything that's going on. But I just think that it's unfair to say that only the woman's benefiting then from the man being the breadwinner. There's a dual
No,
benefit
I'm not saying
there.
only. I'm never. Okay, so I don't usually deal in monoliths. Sometimes because there are some all statements which are okay, but I don't usually deal in monoliths. So it's not that there's only the benefit to the woman. I'm saying the vast majority of the benefit is to the
Okay,
woman.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Right? The vast majority is to the woman. And the ability, I think, is a gift. I think a man's given a woman a gift that she can be able to stay at home with her own kids. Because I got to tell you right now, you're a single mom, for instance. I bet you wish you were able to stay at home with your kids.
100%.
And so, that's a massive gift to give them.
But not enough to deal with
With actually submitting.
shitty husband.
Yeah, but think about what you just said here, right? See, that to me that's also bizarre to me. I don't understand that. Self-sacrifice for the purpose of your children. I thought you were supposed to be the nurturing ones.
So, yeah. Well, okay, but my situation's a little bit different. I'm
not saying you have to
wasn't-
put up with physical abuse, things
Right,
like that,
right.
but the concession of just obedience for a better life for your kids, it just seems like it's such an easy thing to concede on. And yet so many women are like, I just couldn't possibly. I just couldn't possibly do that.
But there are provider men who are happy to involve you in every discussion and there be compromise.
Why is there always this idea that because the man ultimately decides, that means a woman's never getting consulted.
Right, but for example, like you talked about the spanking thing, like that might be one thing that I take a stand on, and he may be like, okay, on this one. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that men who, like, he's suddenly, just because of that one instance where he didn't put his foot down.
No,
and,
sure,
you know.
he can make a concession to a reasonable suggestion. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. Has nothing again to do with the fact, though, that what if he didn't? So it's not that, okay, you made a great point about spanking, and he's like, you know what, that's a really good point, and I think that we'll do that. The question is, what if he doesn't? If he goes, I know you think that's a great point, but you're fucking wrong, and I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? That's
I
where...
would probably concede on a lot of other things. That is not one.
Right. So it's the idea of the concession with the obedience, that, like, you still know better. And so that's why these relationships, I think, break down.
I just do think there needs to be more emphasis placed on the value of a stay-at-home mom who is successfully raising the kids and homeschooling, because the amount of money you'd be spending on childcare and education if you send them to a private school
It's
instead
free.
of
What are you talking about?
No, if you send them to private school, no,
Yeah,
it's not.
private school.
No,
first of
let's
all,
talk about before they
first
even-
of all, public schools, right? You put them on a school bus. If you're under the income threshold, they get a free lunch. They get free breakfast in many of them. They get free extracurricular activities. You have to get them some backpacks and shit. Low-income people, almost everything is subsidized for them when it comes to schooling. Almost everything.
Well, public
Okay,
schooling isn't really free because your taxes are paying for it, and you're costing them the rest of their life
people
and being
don't own-
indoctrinated.
Let her finish.
Yeah, okay.
It's just a matter of what you value more. Do you value having a wife who's going to be at home and be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool them and give you that better education? I just think there needs to be more emphasis placed on that, because I knew growing up a lot of us didn't value those moms that were stay-at-home moms, and that's a fallacy. Like,
most low-income people, first of all, don't pay property taxes. Okay, they may be affected by them, but they don't pay them because they don't own property. Okay, poor people don't own property. They're not paying property taxes. When the levies get passed, they're getting passed by people who don't own property because they're outnumbering the property owners. Okay, that's one. Two, all of them, if they're under the income threshold, it's all free, and the lunches are free. Everything is completely subsidized for them.
What
totally
about the
subsidized.
first 5 years of their life before they go to school? Because
You're
daycare
not-
is not free,
You're
even
not
if you're low
homeschooling
income.
them, and you're
I
at
am.
home. What are you homeschooling them to do at 5? Watch Sesame Street?
What do you mean? My kids are already, well, my oldest, my 3-year-old is already preschool ready, because you do Montessori type homeschooling. You
Yeah,
can absolutely
that's
preschool them
finger
at young
paints.
ages. No, it's not.
Yeah, what's preschool?
What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you learn to do
I
at
can tell
preschool?
you-
How to lick glue?
My 3-year-old knows all his letters and the sounds of each. He knows phonics. He knows how to count. He knows
Your
all of his
3-year-old
shapes.
can't read.
No, but he knows phonics.
Yeah,
he knows
because
those sounds
because
of,
he probably watches a show where he memorized A, B, C, D,
Nope.
E, F, G all day.
Definitely
You're not
not.
teaching a 3-year-old
their
massive skills.
Yes,
Come
I am.
on.
Their entire. Do I not?
Our kids are-
I literally
both of them are
lesson
very
plan
smart.
for them. I literally their room is a preschool.
Great.
Yeah. So but that's not the point. The point is the first 5 years you do have to pay for daycare, and it costs
No,
more.
not if you have a stay-at-home wife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point she's making.
What's the point?
That's
What if
the
your
benefit.
husband
And you're
requires
trying to
that you
say, well, school's free. It's
No,
not.
that's
for
a
the first
gift to
5
her.
years.
She gets to stay home with them the first 5 years.
And it's a gift to him as well.
No,
that
that's not
he
a gift to
doesn't have
him.
to pay for daycare.
Wait, okay, let's back up. Okay, do you think that if the roles could be reversed, right? Like, let's say the average man, okay, a woman was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go and work my fucking ass off every day so that you can stay home with the kids. Do you think that that's a better or worse deal for them? Actual deal.
I would be happy to do one or the other. I don't care which one. I don't want to do both anymore. So
Better
if I
or
was
worse
the
deal
one-
for him?
For him? Yeah, he doesn't have to work.
That's right.
But it's also good
So
for
hang
her
on, so it's a
because she
better
doesn't
deal
have
for
to-
you because
Then
you
why
don't have to
don't you wanna
work.
do it?
No, I
Why-
think
why
it's
don't you wanna do it
equally-
then?
I think the point is
Why
that
don't
it's
men wanna do
equally
it?
beneficial, and that
It's not equally beneficial.
I think it is, and I
It's
think
not.
that whoever the stay-at-home partner is who's investing in the kids often goes underappreciated, which I think is her point, and that's what she's trying to
No,
bring
I don't think they're
awareness to.
underappreciated. I think that there's an
Yes, they
overemphasis
are.
put on them over the working father. And that the
And I
truth
don't think
is
that's
that
fair
the
either.
working father is the one who enables all this to begin with and is giving the greatest gift in the world to a mother, which is those first 5 years, you know they're not coming back. You never get them again. You already miss your 3-year-old you miss when they were 1, and you're already thinking about all the shit that they did at 1 that you miss. Oh, I miss when they did that. I miss when they did this. Now they're getting so big. You had the great gift of being there for that entire spread of time.
Yes.
And it's like, what does he get? Nothing.
To save money.
He get no, well, not
Yeah,
really. By the
that's huge.
way, if he is
And their
under
kid's
if he's
smarter.
under a certain threshold, right? You get all sorts of subsidies for
You don't.
daycare too.
No. Listen, I am a single mom, and I don't get shit.
Well, you
for
could be
daycare.
over the income threshold,
No,
and it could be.
I'm
do
literally
you do
not.
realize that this is based around where you live as well?
Okay, so but then you can't make a generalized statement when the benefits that people think exist are not there for single moms or single parents in general, or even
Oh,
like
come
their
on!
son
You get
families.
EBT, you get WIC, you get all kinds of shit.
I
You
did
would get
not
more
get
working.
I got denied for WIC. I got denied for TANF.
Because you were over the income threshold.
I don't know why the hell I was denied because I'm not.
Okay, but anyway,
It's
but
insane.
you weren't supposed to be, is the point.
And
so it's
yet-
like, look, subsidies. You're subsidized to all get out. Okay, if you're
So-
single and you have kids, you get all sorts of subsidies.
Okay.
The man is again giving you gift, allowing you to stay at home.
Well, no one is disputing that.
Yeah, they
Andrew.
are.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not. In this room, is anybody? I think at this table we
yeah,
all
you're
agree
saying
with
there
you.
needs to be more of an emphasis put on her.
No, I think that, well, sure, men should be appreciated for working more, and honestly, especially, and I can even admit this with my marriage. I didn't always have a great appreciation or even understanding for how much work my ex-husband was putting in.
Bet you do now.
Yeah, no, I definitely do, and I can own that. However, I think both parties should be appreciated, and maybe neither are, but we can talk about both, and we don't have to deny one to appreciate
There's
the other.
no denial.
Okay, yeah, you did.
No, it's not a denial. Listen, it's not a denial of there's value here. In fact, I made specifically sure to clarify and say, I didn't say it's not valuable. I said it's not as valuable.
I feel like in the
I guess that's
economy
subjective.
we're in,
Yeah, I don't think it's subjective. I think that if let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this then, right? If you had the luxury of being able to stay at home because you haven't been able to, right, with your kids, right? Would you?
Yeah.
In a second?
Yes.
Would you do anything you could possibly do to have that luxury?
Oh, I don't know.
Within reason.
Like, I'm not going to settle for someone I don't want
Right.
for that.
So you wouldn't
Like,
sacrifice for it. But I
No.
think that there are people, women, and I think most women
I
actually
think it
would because
Maybe they
you
would.
can't get that. You got to work.
Right, but I'm not going to live inauthentically, and I don't want to set an example to my kids that they have to live a lie either. But
Yeah, I'm sure they'll
but I'll
thank
tell
you for
this.
outsourcing their care when they're older.
Well, they're great right now. I'm just stressed the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you this: if I ever am in a position to be I did it the first time though. But some women don't do this. It's crazy. I will see some stay-at-home moms that don't even clean the fucking house.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
So I do think
They're pretty enabled.
If you're in that position, like, you should appreciate it. It is a
They don't.
blessing. And, rub his feet, bruh.
Yeah, but they don't.
I know, yeah, and I don't think that's right.
And so again, highly underappreciated. And yes, I think there is an overemphasis even by feminists who say, "Oh no, we should start valuing stay-at-home moms again." It's like, okay, great, but never hear any emphasis on working fathers and that it's actually a gift they're giving these women to allow them to stay at home
Yeah, but both
with
things
the
can be
children.
true.
I feel like in this economy right now too, I know many of my friends their husbands are requiring them to work, at least working from home while they have kids
I'd rather
too.
be single.
So I'm just curious how that would play in, because for financial stability, just because it's so difficult right now on one income.
They're requiring a small part-time job while they're still at home. So what?
No, full time, but from home.
Full time from home?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a different story then. Now you have a different requirement. The thing is, though, is we're not discussing whether or not you have a working wife at home who's working full time from home, and that wouldn't create dynamics which are different. We would all concede that that's true. We're talking right now on a woman who's staying at home and is given the gift of being able to take care of her kids. Should she submit to her husband or not?
But because
and the
there-
idea here basically is like if she wants to.
But because
It
there are
sounds
so
like-
many
I
women.
think in
From my-
most ways,
But
she
see,
should.
from my perspective, though, right, and we'll get to this in just a second, I promise. I just want to finish this
No
combo.
worries.
from my perspective, it's like, well, then why would he want to get married to you and have you stay home with the kids? Like, why would they do it? It just seems so stupid to me. Like, that's why these secularists are like, look, Andrew, give me the great reason to get married. I'm like, I can't, because you're going to get married to a chick and she's going to be like, I'm Chad and I love you and I'm going to submit, I'm going to obey and blah, 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 blah. And then he's going to go work, right? And she's not going to obey shit. She's going to divorce him. She's going to take half his shit. And she's going to leave him, kind of up shit creek without a paddle. So I'm just like, well, you could do that. Or you could just kind of, well, I don't know, check
goes
out
both ways, though,
check
too.
out of the secular. Well, not really. Not if I look
Yeah,
at the
like,
stats. It
I'm
doesn't
a
go both
perfect
ways.
example of how that does not always play out.
Again, you can't point to every outlier.
I know, but I don't think it's as big of a thing as you think it is these days. And maybe it's just a Texas thing, and I'll admit that because I don't know how.
That
other
in
states
Texas
do it.
they don't want stay-at-home moms who obey. Okay, tell me another.
No. In
tell me
Texas,
something else.
well, first of all, there's like objective stats that men benefit from marriage more than women do. When it comes to their health, when it comes to their financial stability.
Erroneous.
Yeah, look it up.
Erroneous.
Yes, no. This is all true, but
Their social status.
you have some pretty major
Fake news.
flaws with it though.
Okay, and they are?
Yeah, let me start with the first one, which is, men they earn more money when they're married. Yeah, because they have to.
Right. Okay.
So what they end up having to do is work longer hours, right? Instead of shorter hours. And because they work longer hours, they're at work more. So they do less high risk behavior than when they work shorter hours and they're having a ton of fun. So
Okay,
if you
does
were
that
to
change
ask
the benefit though?
Yeah, but
still have a
I'm not
longer
sure what's
life.
the benefit here. That
They have a
men
longer life, they have better health.
Hang on. That men take slightly more risk because they work less hours and are having way more fun, or they can't afford to take slightly more risk because they have to pick up way more hours at work to take care of other people who aren't them. You
Okay,
tell me.
It's not the only variable, but I think having a long life and better health and more money, and maybe we can argue the money part.
Well, first of all, and by the way,
better
you're not
outcome.
including the religious stats here, and that the number one correlate between happiness and marriage is religion and how religious you are. When you're talking about secular marriages, all of these other correlates that you're talking about, which do increase, they increase much, much less. And it seems to me, again, that, you can take less risk. You can take less risk and work way more hours so that you can support the family, or you can work way less and take more risk.
But in any given scenario, we can add a million variables to go off course. The point is, there are benefits to marriage. There are objective benefits to marriage for men that
For some
outweigh
men
those
in
to
some
women.
groups.
Outweigh
For some men
Statistically
in some
speaking,
groups.
It's just well documented. And
Yes,
we
and
can
I'm
pick
giving
apart
you the
studies.
well-documented parts.
Okay.
Because I picked these studies apart.
So there's those benefits. It's also a benefit to not have to do the cooking, to not have to do the cleaning, to not have to worry about running all the errands.
You get a fucking maid. What are you
Then
talking
you have to
about?
pay for it.
You know how cheap it is to have a maid versus a stay-at-home mom?
Not really, because
Oh,
I'm a
yes,
residential
really.
cleaner, and I cost a lot of money.
How much do you cost? $200 a week
No. What?
to come into one house and
An au
clean one
pair
house?
is way different than that.
No, I never charge less than like $40 an hour.
Okay, so how long does it take you to do your cleaning? 4 hours?
It depends on what kind of cleaning it is, but we're not just talking about cleaning. We're talking about errands. We're talking about childcare.
Okay, hang on.
We're
No,
talking
back
about
up.
cooking. We're
No,
talking
back
about meal
up, back
planning.
up, back up. Great. Meal planning, you can get all of your meals online, planned, and literally shipped to you now.
Ew,
That's one.
how many people do though?
That's gross.
Tons, especially bodybuilders. But the second thing is, it's like, it's not really fucking hard to cook. Super easy, especially if you're just
Then why-
cooking for
why don't a lot
you.
of guys do it?
Especially if you're just cooking for
Why don't
you.
they, like,
and
clean
then
their house and
the
shit?
third thing is, it's like, no, maids are not expensive to come in and clean your house. I'm sorry. I have one professionally come in and clean my house once a month. It's not very much money. Not very much money. It takes them 4 hours. They're out. And they do a really good job. So it's like, nah, it's not very expensive.
So, hold on. You have a wife? Does
Mm-hmm.
she work?
Well, yeah, and she does now.
Okay.
Yeah, slightly.
Did you have a maid when she didn't?
No, of course not.
Okay.
The only reason I have a maid is because they do a deep clean,
Right.
deep detail clean.
Okay.
What does your wife do? I'm just curious.
She's an author.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm curious though, harkening back to earlier when you were talking about obedience, when you have a husband that in this economy is requiring his wife to also work full time from home, how would that play into, how much say she should have in their children and in just household in general?
Hang on. Repeat that because I want to make sure I get it.
So when you have a situation where the wife is being required to work by her husband because it's financially more stable in this economy, how would that come in being more submissive, the woman, when she's working equal hours.
Yeah,
to
so
her
the idea
husband.
here generally, well, I would think that you'd want the idea to be working around the children, right? And so this idea is supposed to be temporary. I think if you have temporary work like over in a bind or we need X or whatever, that, okay, you're making the sacrifice for a year or two, but he's still going to be out there working for the whole life, right? So it's like, sure, you can make some temporary sacrifices, but I'm not really sure, again, how that's more valuable than what he's doing.
I don't think anybody's saying it's more. I just think